Welcome to the Lesley University Library Instruction video series. In this video, we will discuss the features of scholarly sources and how to determine if a source is good for your paper or not. Before you start trying to find scholarly sources for your research project, let's take a moment to consider what a scholarly source is. A scholarly source has 5 features. Authoritative. This means that the writer of the article, book, or website you want to use in your project is an authority in the field. They should have credentials, like a PhD, and may even be affiliated with the university. Citation heavy. A scholarly source will have a lot of citations and may include a bibliography as well as a list of works cited. When looking at the citations, make sure your source is citing other scholarly sources. Peer-reviewed. A peer-reviewed source is one that has been reviewed by authorities in the field before being published. For example, if I want to submit an article to a peer-reviewed library journal, a group of librarians, my peers, will review the article before it is accepted for publication. The peer review board will send the article back to the author for edits if they feel anything is unclear, so an article published in a peer-reviewed journal has undergone a rigorous review before you find it in print or in the databases. Our EBSCO databases, like Academic Search Premier, ERIC, PsycInfo, and SocialIndex, all have a checkbox that will limit your search results to only peer-reviewed journal articles. Objective. Every scholarly source is stating the author's opinion as fact. A thesis statement is essentially an argument. However, a quality scholarly source will back those arguments up with clear facts and will also acknowledge differing opinions and explain again, using facts, why those opinions are wrong. Scholarly sources will not just be straight opinion pieces. Formal academic writing style. Scholarly sources will have an academic writing style. They're the kinds of sources that you will read with a dictionary handy. A scholarly source should rely on the language of the discipline, meaning that a medical article will be written more for doctors than for the average person. So now that you know what features a scholarly source should have, how do you decide if a source is scholarly and if it's good to use in your research project? First, you'll want to evaluate the source you found using the CRAAP test. The CRAAP test was developed by librarians at CSU Chico and is a great way to decide whether the resource you found is one you want to use for your assignment. CRAAP stands for Currency. The sources you find for your project should have a publication date clearly posted somewhere on the document or website. Generally, professors expect you to use research that was published in the last 10 to 15 years. If you're not sure how recent your research needs to be, make sure to ask your professor. Relevance. Relevance means that the source you found for your paper is appropriate for the audience of your paper. You wouldn't want to use an article from a peer-reviewed psychology journal in a classroom activity for third graders. To assess your source for relevance, think about whether or not the information is directly related to your topic, is written on a level that your audience would understand, and is something that you would feel comfortable citing in your project. Authority. Evaluating a source for authority means determining who the author of the work is, whether it's a person or people or a corporation, and what their qualifications are. For a scholarly book or article, you want to see if they have credentials and if they're affiliated with the university. For a website, you'll want to check the site's domain. Is it a .com or a .edu, for example, and see if you can find any other information about who created the site. If you aren't sure about the author, or if that information is not clearly findable on the website, then you will probably want to find a different source. Accuracy. Accuracy means assessing the source for its reliability. Is the source peer-reviewed or not? Are the arguments in the source supported by data? Are there any grammatical errors? Sources with information that's clearly verifiable are ideal. Make sure to avoid sources that only rely on opinion and don't have any supporting data. Purpose. Lastly, you'll want to evaluate your source's purpose. Purpose is why the source exists. This is where you'll want to assess your source for bias. A good source will be as objective as possible and certainly won't try to sell you anything. The author or authors of the source should be clear about their intentions. Any source designed to mislead the reader should be avoided. To recap, we've looked at the features of scholarly sources: authoritative, citation heavy, peer-reviewed, objective, and formal academic writing style. And also how to use the CRAAP test to evaluate information. Currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So how do you know what the best sources are for your project? The answer is, it depends. The types of sources you will need for your project will be determined by the nature of your assignment. For example, you would want scholarly peer-reviewed journal articles for a standard research paper, but maybe you need a powerful personal story to add impact to a presentation about a current event. Just because that personal story isn't peer-reviewed doesn't mean that it isn't useful or relevant for your project. If you have any doubts about what sources are best for your project, ask your professor ASAP. And if you need help finding sources of any kind, always ask a librarian.